The apartment had everything I'd dreamed of. Hardwood floors, exposed brick walls, a kitchen island big enough to actually cook on, and windows that let in real sunlight instead of the fluorescent glow from the office building next door that currently served as my morning alarm. Your credit application has been denied, the leasing agent said, sliding the rejection letter across her desk. I'm sorry, Miss Miss Rodriguez. I stared at the paper, reading the same line 3 times. Recent large purchase activity and high credit utilization ratio indicate financial overextension. There must be some mistake, I said. My credit score was 780 last month. I've never missed a payment on anything. The leasing agent, a woman named Karen with kind eyes and apologetic smile lines, pulled up my credit report on her computer. It shows here that you recently made a purchase for $38,400 at Tiffany & Company, she said, squinting at her screen. That's pushing your available credit to 93% utilization, which is, well, it's not ideal for rental applications. My stomach dropped. I've never been to Tiffany & Company in my life. Karen's expression shifted from apologetic to concerned. Miss Rodriguez, you might want to look into this. This kind of unauthorized activity could indicate identity theft. I drove home from that appointment in a fog of confusion and growing dread. $38,000 at Tiffany & Company. The only person I knew who shopped at Tiffany was my sister Victoria, and she certainly didn't have $38,000 to spend on jewelry. But she did have access to my credit cards. When we were younger and I'd first gotten my credit card, Mom had insisted I add Victoria as an authorized user, just in case of emergencies. Victoria was 19 then, irresponsible with money, and had already maxed out 2 of her own cards. I was 23, stable, and had just landed my first real job at a marketing firm. It's just temporary, Mom had promised. Until Victoria gets back on her feet. You know how hard it is to build credit from nothing. That was 6 years ago. I'd meant to remove Victoria from the account dozens of times, but every time I brought it up, there was some crisis or drama that made it seem selfish to cut off her access during a difficult time. When Victoria lost her job, she needed the card for basic necessities while job hunting. When she got a new job, she needed it to buy professional clothes for her career development. When she started dating Marcus seriously, she needed it for dates because investing in a good relationship is investing in her future. There was always a reason, always a justification, always some family emergency that made me the selfish one for wanting to protect my own financial security. But $38,000 at Tiffany & Company was not a basic necessity. I called the credit card company from my car, still sitting in the apartment complex parking lot. I need to verify a recent charge, I told the customer service representative. Tiffany & Company for $38,400. There was typing, then a pause. Yes, that charge was made yesterday at the Tiffany & Company location in downtown. The card ending in 4792 was swiped in person, and the cardholder signed for the purchase. Card ending in 4792. Victoria's card. My card that Victoria had been carrying around for 6 years. I need to speak to someone about fraud, I said. The fraud department was more thorough. They walked me through the purchase details, the signature verification, and my options for disputing the charge. Given the amount involved, Miss Rodriguez, I have to inform you that this falls under federal jurisdiction for credit card fraud, the fraud specialist explained. If you choose to dispute this as unauthorized use, we'll need to involve law enforcement. And if it was my sister using the card I authorized her on? That depends on whether she had permission for this specific purchase. If she used the card for something you didn't authorize, especially something this expensive, that could still constitute fraud even between family members. I thanked them for the information and told them I needed 24 hours to figure out what had happened before filing a formal dispute. Then I drove to Victoria's apartment. Marcus answered the door, grinning wider than I'd seen since they started dating 8 months ago. Before I could say a word, he grabbed my hand and pulled me inside. Jess. Perfect timing. Victoria, your sister's here. Victoria emerged from the bedroom and the first thing I saw was her left hand. The ring was massive. A round diamond that had to be at least 3 carats, surrounded by smaller diamonds, all set in what looked like platinum. It was stunning. And it was paid for with my credit card. Jess. Victoria squealed, running over to show me her hand up close. Look. Marcus proposed last night. Isn't it incredible? I stared at the ring, doing quick math in my head. The main diamond alone probably cost $25,000. The setting, the smaller diamonds, the craftsmanship, $38,000 was probably getting a deal. It's beautiful, I said carefully. How did Marcus save up for something like this? Marcus looked sheepish. Well, that's the thing. I've been planning this for months, but when I went to buy the ring, my credit got declined. Some issue with my debt-to-income ratio from my student loans. Victoria jumped in. So I offered to help. I mean, it's my ring, right? It made sense for me to put it on my card. My card. He meant my card. Victoria, I said slowly, this ring cost $38,000. I know, she said, admiring the diamond again. Marcus has incredible taste. I told him not to go cheap just because money's tight. This is forever, you know. How exactly were you planning to pay for it? Victoria's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. Well, Marcus is going to pay me back over time. His promotion comes through next month, and then he'll be making enough to handle the payments. I looked at Marcus. What kind of payments are we talking about? He shifted uncomfortably. I figured maybe $500 a month. I mean, with the minimum payments on the card, that should cover it, right? $500 a month. On a $38,000 purchase. With credit card interest rates, they'd be paying for this ring for the next 20 years. Victoria, can I talk to you privately for a minute? We went into her kitchen, leaving Marcus admiring the ring box in the living room. Victoria, that purchase just got me denied for an apartment, I said quietly. It pushed my credit utilization so high that I look like a financial risk. Her face fell. Oh, I didn't think about that. Did you think about asking me before spending $38,000? She started then stopped. I mean, it was an emergency. Marcus wanted to propose and the financing fell through, and I knew you'd want me to be happy. I do want you to be happy. But I also want to be able to rent an apartment. You can just pay it down, right? I mean, you make good money. I stared at her. Victoria, I make $52,000 a year. That ring costs more than half my annual salary. But you're so good with money, she said, as if my financial responsibility somehow meant I had unlimited resources. You'll figure it out. The payment on this with interest would be over $1,000 a month for 3 years. That's more than my rent. Victoria's face was starting to show irritation instead of guilt. Jess, this is my engagement. This is the most important moment of my life. Can't you just be happy for me? I am happy for you. But I'm also terrified that you just destroyed my financial stability without asking. Family helps family, she said, crossing her arms. You've always said that. Family asks before spending someone else's money. It's not someone else's money. It's family money. Mom always said we should share everything. I felt that familiar knot in my stomach that came whenever Victoria used family loyalty to justify taking advantage of me. It was the same feeling I'd had when she'd borrowed $800 for her security deposit and never mentioned paying it back. The same feeling when she'd used my card for groceries, that turned out to be a weekend trip with friends. But this was different. This wasn't $800 or even $3,000. This was enough money to change my entire life trajectory. Victoria, I need you to return the ring. Her mouth dropped open. Are you insane? I can't return my engagement ring. You can't afford your engagement ring. Marcus will pay for it. When? How? He just told me his credit got declined for this exact purchase. His promotion might not happen. And even if it does, $500 a month won't even cover the interest on $38,000. Victoria stared at me like I'd suggested she cancel her wedding. I cannot believe you're being this selfish. This is my engagement, Jess. My future husband bought me this ring. Your future husband bought you a ring with my credit card. Because family helps family, she shouted, loud enough that Marcus probably heard from the living room. I took a deep breath. Victoria, I'm going to ask you one more time. Will you return the ring and find something you can actually afford? Absolutely not. Then I guess we have a problem. I left her apartment and drove straight to the police station. The desk sergeant listened to my story with the weary expression of someone who'd heard variations of it 100 times. Family disputes over money are tough, he said. Since she's an authorized user on your account, it gets complicated legally. Even for $38,000? Even then, your best bet is to file a complaint with the credit card company's fraud department and see if they'll reverse the charges. If they determine it was unauthorized use, then we can talk about criminal charges. What if I want to file a report now? He handed me a form. You can file a report for credit card fraud. But understand that if we investigate and find evidence of a crime, your sister could be arrested. Are you prepared for that? I stared at the form, thinking about Victoria's face when she showed me the ring. Her excitement, her joy, her complete inability to understand why I was upset about her spending my money without permission. Can I take this home and think about it? Sure. But don't wait too long. The sooner you report fraud, the better your chances of getting the charges reversed. I spent that night researching credit card fraud, family financial abuse, and my legal options. What I learned was sobering. According to the federal law, unauthorized use of a credit card is a felony if the amount exceeds $1,000. It didn't matter if the person was family. It didn't matter if they were an authorized user who exceeded their authorization. What mattered was whether the cardholder gave specific permission for the purchase. I had never given Victoria permission to spend $38,000. More importantly, I learned that this pattern of behavior, family members using emotional manipulation to gain access to financial resources, was a recognized form of financial abuse. The websites I found described scenarios that felt like reading my own diary. Does your family member make financial decisions that affect you without your input? Do they justify large expenditures by saying family shares everything? Have they ever made you feel guilty for setting financial boundaries? Do they assume your income and assets are available for their use? Every question was a yes. I also learned something else. I wasn't the first person in my family to be Victoria's financial safety net. A call to my Aunt Carmen revealed that Victoria had run up thousands of dollars in debt on a credit card she'd convinced my grandmother to co-sign for. When Grandma died 2 years ago, Victoria had let the debt go into collections rather than pay it herself. Your grandmother was so stressed about that debt, Aunt Carmen told me. She spent her last months worrying about ruining Victoria's credit by not being able to make the payments on her Social Security income. That night I made 2 phone calls. First, I called the credit card company and filed a formal fraud report. I explained that while Victoria was an authorized user, she had never been given permission to make purchases over a certain amount without checking with me first. The $38,000 purchase at Tiffany & Company was unauthorized. Second, I called the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit and reported suspected credit card fraud. The FBI agent I spoke with explained the process. They would investigate the complaint, gather evidence, and determine whether federal charges were warranted. Given the amount involved and the interstate nature of credit card processing, this fell squarely under federal jurisdiction. The fact that it's a family member doesn't change the legal implications, Agent Martinez explained. Fraud is fraud. We'll be in touch within 72 hours to schedule an interview and collect evidence. 3 days later, I was sitting in a federal building downtown, providing a sworn statement about Victoria's unauthorized use of my credit card. I brought bank statements, credit card statements, text messages, and a detailed timeline of Victoria's financial behavior over the past 6 years. The agent was thorough. She asked about every charge, every conversation, every instance where Victoria had used the card without specific permission. Miss Rodriguez, I have to ask, why didn't you remove her from the account after the first unauthorized charges? Family pressure, I said honestly. Every time I tried to set boundaries, my parents would get involved and make me feel guilty for abandoning my sister during a difficult time. Agent Martinez nodded. We see this pattern frequently in financial fraud cases involving family members. The victim is often manipulated into believing they're obligated to provide financial support, even when that support involves criminal behavior. Is what she did actually criminal? Using someone else's credit card without permission for $38,000? Yes, that's a federal crime. The fact that she's your sister and an authorized user complicates things, but it doesn't change the basic legal facts. She explained the next steps. They would interview Victoria, examine the evidence, and determine whether to pursue criminal charges. The process could take several weeks. In the meantime, Agent Martinez said, I'd recommend you remove her access to all your financial accounts immediately. And be prepared for significant family backlash when she learns about the investigation. I spent the weekend removing Victoria from every account, changing passwords and securing my financial information. I also researched lawyers who specialized in family financial disputes just in case. Monday morning, Agent Martinez called. We'd like to interview your sister this afternoon. We're also going to need to examine the ring and any documentation from the purchase. Are you going to arrest her? That depends on what we find during the interview. But Miss Rodriguez, I want you to be prepared for the possibility that your sister will be charged with federal credit card fraud. That afternoon while I was at work, Victoria called me screaming. What did you do? She shrieked into the phone. The FBI just left my apartment. They took pictures of my ring. Marcus is freaking out. I reported the unauthorized use of my credit card, I said calmly. It wasn't unauthorized. I'm an authorized user. You never asked permission to spend $38,000. I shouldn't have to ask permission. We're family. Victoria, you committed federal credit card fraud. I did not. Mom, get on the phone. Suddenly my mother's voice was on the line. Jessica Maria Rodriguez, what have you done? I protected my financial security. You called the FBI on your own sister. I reported credit card fraud. Over a ring? This is Victoria's engagement ring. This is $38,000 that Victoria spent without asking me. Family shares everything, Mom said using the same phrase Victoria had used. We raised you to help each other, not call the police on each other. You raised me to be Victoria's aim. The line went quiet. That's not true, Mom said, but her voice was less certain. Really? When was the last time Victoria helped me financially? When was the last time anyone asked what I needed instead of what I could give? You're the one with the good job and the stable income, Mom said. Of course family turns to you for help. Help is asking for $50 for groceries. Fraud is spending $38,000 without permission. Dad's voice joined the conversation. Jess, you're tearing this family apart. The family tore itself apart the moment you all decided my money belonged to everyone except me. Don't be so dramatic, Dad said. Victoria will pay you back. When? How? She's never paid me back for anything. She's getting married. Marcus will help. Marcus couldn't qualify for financing for this ring. How is he going to pay it back? There was another long pause. You'll work it out, Mom said finally. You always do. And there was the family's solution to every financial problem. Jessica will work it out. Jessica will figure it out. Jessica will sacrifice whatever she needs to sacrifice to make everyone else's problems go away. Not this time, I said. This time Victoria works it out. I hung up the phone and turned off the ringer. 2 days later, Agent Martinez called with an update. We've completed our investigation, she said. Your sister admitted to making the purchase without your specific permission. She also admitted that she knew she couldn't afford to pay for the ring herself. What does that mean? It means we have a clear case of credit card fraud. We're filing federal charges. My stomach dropped. Despite everything, despite the financial damage and the family manipulation, I had hoped it wouldn't come to this. What kind of charges? 1 count of credit card fraud under federal law. Given the amount involved, she's looking at potential fines of up to $250,000 and up to 20 years in prison. 20 years. For an engagement ring. Agent Martinez, what if she returned the ring and paid restitution? Would that change anything? It might affect sentencing, but it wouldn't change the charges. The crime occurred when she made the unauthorized purchase, not when she decided whether to keep it. When will she be arrested? We've issued a warrant. She'll be taken into custody within the next 48 hours. That evening Victoria called me. She wasn't screaming anymore. She was crying. Just please. You have to drop the charges. I can't drop federal charges, Victoria. That's not how it works. Please, there has to be something you can do. They're saying I could go to prison. You could. Over a ring? Over $38,000 in credit card fraud. I'll pay you back. I'll return the ring. Please, Jess, I'm begging you. For a moment I felt the old familiar pull to fix everything, to make it okay, to be the responsible one who solves everyone's problems. Then I remembered sitting in that leasing office, being denied an apartment because my sister had destroyed my credit without asking. I remembered years of borrowed money that was never repaid, emergencies that turned out to be shopping trips, and temporary help that became permanent expectation. Victoria, I gave you so many chances to respect my financial boundaries. You never did. I will now. I swear. You said that after the $800 for your security deposit. You said that after the $3,000 for your car repairs. You said that after every single time you used my card without asking. This is different. This is $38,000 different. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was small. What's going to happen to me? I don't know. That's up to the federal prosecutor now. Will you ask them to go easy on me? If I cooperate. I closed my eyes. Even now, even facing federal charges, she was asking me to fix her problem. Victoria, I'll write a letter to the court explaining our family situation and asking them to consider that this was part of a pattern of financial manipulation rather than malicious intent. But I'm not going to ask them to ignore what you did. Thank you, she whispered. Victoria was arrested the next morning at her apartment. The local news picked up the story. Local woman arrested for $38,000 credit card fraud. And suddenly everyone in our family knew the details. The reactions were predictably split. Half the family thought I was a monster for destroying Victoria's life over money. The other half quietly admitted they'd been waiting for something like this to happen. Aunt Carmen called to tell me she was proud of me for standing up to the family's financial bullying. My cousin Miguel confessed that Victoria had tried to use his credit cards too, but he'd always said no. I just didn't want to deal with the family drama, he said. I wish I'd warned you. My parents stopped speaking to me entirely. They hired a lawyer for Victoria and started a GoFundMe page to help with her legal expenses, describing her as a victim of family miscommunication rather than a perpetrator of federal fraud. The case took 8 months to work its way through the federal court system. Victoria ultimately pled guilty to 1 count of credit card fraud in exchange for a reduced sentence. She received 3 years of probation community service and was ordered to pay full restitution, not just the $38,000 for the ring, but also penalties and court costs that brought the total to over $50,000. The ring was seized as evidence and eventually sold to help pay the restitution. Marcus broke up with her 2 weeks after her arrest. He said he couldn't handle the stress of being engaged to someone facing federal charges. Victoria moved back in with my parents and got a job at a department store to start making restitution payments. According to Aunt Carmen, she makes about $200 a month in payments and will be paying for the next 20 years. My parents still blame me for ruining Victoria's life. They've told the rest of the family that I'm vindictive and cruel, that I chose money over family, that I destroyed my sister's future over a simple misunderstanding. But they can't argue with the facts that came out during the investigation. The FBI's financial analysis revealed that Victoria had been systematically using my credit cards for unauthorized purchases for over 3 years. The engagement ring wasn't an isolated incident. It was the culmination of a pattern of financial abuse that had cost me over $60,000. The prosecutor called it one of the clearest cases of family financial exploitation she'd ever seen. Today, 18 months later, my relationship with my parents remains strained. They still think I should have handled things within the family, instead of involving law enforcement. But my relationship with Victoria has surprisingly improved. Facing the real consequences of her actions, dealing with the legal system, and having to take responsibility for her financial choices has changed her perspective completely. She calls me once a month to update me on her restitution payments. She apologizes regularly for the damage she caused. And most importantly, she's never asked me for money again. I finally understand, she told me during one of our calls. I never realized how much pressure I put on you, or how unfair it was to spend your money like it was mine. She's in therapy now, working on what her therapist calls financial boundaries and family enmeshment issues. As for me, I eventually found a different apartment, not the one with the hardwood floors and exposed brick, but a nice 1-bedroom place that I could afford on my own with my restored credit score. I also started seeing a therapist who specializes in family financial abuse. She helped me understand that what my family had been doing wasn't normal, wasn't healthy, and wasn't my fault. I learned that saying no to financial exploitation isn't selfish. It's necessary self-protection. I learned that real family members don't use emotional manipulation to access your resources. And I learned that sometimes, The most loving thing you can do is let someone face the natural consequences of their actions. The FBI agent was right about one thing. Victoria's arrest did cause significant family backlash. Half my relatives stopped speaking to me, my parents disowned me for 6 months, and I spent every family holiday alone for over a year. But it also freed me from a lifetime of being everyone else's financial solution. It established boundaries that my family finally had to respect. And it taught Victoria and everyone else watching that there are real, serious consequences for financial fraud, even between family members. Today my credit score is back to 780. I have a savings account with 6 months of expenses. I'm dating someone who pays for his own meals and would never dream of using my credit cards without asking. And most importantly, I sleep well at night knowing that I chose my own financial security over my family's comfort with exploiting me. It was the hardest thing I've ever done and the best decision I've ever made. Some people still think I went too far, that I should have found a way to handle things without involving the FBI. They think family loyalty should have trumped financial protection. But I know the truth. The federal charges weren't punishment for one ring purchase. They were the inevitable consequence of years of financial abuse that my family had normalized and I had enabled. Victoria didn't go to prison because I called the FBI. She faced federal charges because she committed federal fraud. And for the first time in my adult life, that wasn't my problem to solve.